everyone, Leanne Pilkington back with you for the latest edition of the Laing+Simmons Partner Webinar Series. And with me, Belinda Sinclair from Domain. Hello.
Hi, Leanne. How are you?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
One of the biggest things people need to do when they're buying or selling is actually research the market. Domain has actually got a lot of resources available for consumers, right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about what people can do on your site.
So I think taking a step back, as you pointed out, the whole experience of searching for a property is a search experience and a research experience.
Yeah.
And so over the last 12, 18 months, Domain's been trying to reimagine how we provide that service to our consumers and searchers. And so part of that is looking at how do we allow you, when you come onto Domain, you can really go through that whole search and research experience on Domain.
Yeah.
And so probably I think some of the key features that have been really asked by buyers, renters, landlords is how do we understand both what's for sale but what's been sold? And one of the, most used searches on our platform now or on our app is we now have a version that you can go onto and look at both sold prices and for sale properties come up on the one map or in the one series.
Okay.
And that's been a bit of a game changer. I don't know about you when you go into an app and you try and bounce
Backwards
in and
forwards,
out of different pages. Really helpful, I think, for just trying to, if you're selling your home, trying to understand, okay, I'm wanting to get whatever amount, what's sold around me.
And what else is on the market. It's really, it's interesting to have a look at what else is on the market at the same time you're thinking about putting yours on, because you're actually better off putting your house on the market when there's not too much competition.
That's right. Yeah. And so I think, that part of understanding what's around me, what's for sale, what's sold. And similarly, allowing then, it's a new feature we just launched is called Suburb Insights. And I think there's two versions of a seeker or a searcher. Those are at the very beginning of their search, and they're really starting really broad. They're probably not applying any filters. They're just looking at suburbs.
Yeah.
And so it's not used enough yet. So for those of you searching, if you can go into our map experience and have a look, there's a little insights button at the top. It allows you to look at also medium house prices, what's the price growth over the last 12 months. And the feedback has actually been, can you give us more? Because that's a really helpful way to access both, the search experience and also the research experience.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I know a lot of portals have got price indications. So the house is going to be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million. But those, they're not always accurate, are they, those price reflections? Why are they, what's the difficulty for you to get those numbers more accurate?
Yeah, it's a hard part for us because in a way Domain's impartial. We show on our site what the agents have loaded up, which is often a part of conversation with the vendor on what price are they hoping or expecting the property to be. So we allow a 10% sort of price guide to be shown. Some will show that with transparency, others will hide it, or maybe an auction.
Yeah.
So we really rely, I suppose, on what the agent or what the vendor is wanting to advertise the property for.
Right.
We've got like a AI bot that will search and try and call out and prompt if there's something that just looks, the price does not match what we think the property should be. But that only picks up, probably 1% of all the properties that are on there. So that's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think the other part of pricing is to understand everyone's got a different opinion. Pricing is such a subjective, point in time. And banks, agents, the vendors, buyers, everyone has a different opinion on what the price will be. And really the only right opinion is whatever the sold price is.
Yeah.
So the other one that we show, but again with mixed feedback, is you can get price estimates through our home price guide.
Okay.
So that's again another page where you can research a property's history. We'll share estimates based on sort of.
And so if you're going to someone's house for dinner, you can just put their address in and see what their house is worth.
Totally do that stalker approach. But interestingly, we're about to upgrade our price estimates with new VG data and valuation tool. So we can increase the accuracy of the estimate, but it's always going to be a sticking point. The buyer, the vendor and the agent probably all have different prices in.
Well, and the other thing, I guess, for a site like yours, you're not going to know any renovation. For example, if there's been upgrades and that sort of stuff, you're not going to be aware of it. So the price will not reflect the the price guide, for example, that the agent's giving you. So
Definitely.
consumers need to really be aware of the limitations.
Yeah, be really careful of those estimates. And especially we see, inaccuracies in the premium market. I mean, if you think about a 2-bedroom apartment, one with harbour views, one sitting in the back street unrenovated, both criteria might look similar, but the price is going to be very different. And so there's all those sort of little things behind the scenes that really, a computer or a website can't take into consideration.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think really the best advice there is talk to the agent, get that feedback, and they're really going to be the experts on connecting those price expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And go out and see as many open for inspections and auctions and stuff in the market where you're looking to buy, and that way you actually become an expert in that price point in your suburb. Right?
Yeah, because I think that's the big thing. The markets can change so quickly that I think doing that combination of how do you research, keep across for sale and sold prices, and then get out in the marketplace and understand what's happening, because one week you might be looking at an area where everything's sold over reserve, and in other markets prices are being adjusted down because of distressed sales and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There must be a lot going on from a tech perspective in your space. Is there anything that's coming that you can talk about?
I'll do something that we just launched and then something that's coming. Yeah. I think from a just launched perspective, it's all about speed. So using tech in terms of then being able to deliver to our seekers that speed to market. And so we just released and been very well received that we have instant notifications. So as soon other portals or websites, if a new property comes to market, at the end of the day, there'll be an email or a notification pushed out. We've updated. If something comes to market right now, you'll get a push notification through on the app if it meets your criteria instantly. So I think people just love, I want to know, I want to get ahead of the game, and then can make that inquiry before anyone else. They're comfortable.
Because you've got wish list capabilities, right? You can say, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom apartment in this part of Sydney and up to this price and that sort of stuff, and then anything that comes on market.
That comes through. And that would be what I'd encourage someone if you're, seriously about seeking. People get nervous about, I don't want to tell anyone, don't want to tell an app or website anything about me. But if you actually feed a little bit of information of here's what I'm looking for and save that search, we'll share up properties that match that criteria. And I think that links into what's coming as well. At the moment, we all search very much, okay, I'm looking in this suburb, in this price bracket, with this number of bedrooms. But the reality is we also know if we saw a property that was similar in the next suburb but had an extra bedroom, or in the next suburb but had a gas.
That's what I've missed with, I hate to be so old that I remember, the pictorial magazines. But you could flick through and something would catch your eye that you would never find in a search on a portal, right? So that's interesting that you're going down that road.
So I think it's you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, totally.
And so how do we help filter? How do we get to know and personalise the experience for you? And that's really about how we're starting to progress. So, part of the new search experience is we'll try and show you insights relevant to, are you at the start of your journey, or are you at the pointy end where you're really down to buying that property, and feed up insights that match. Similarly, if you can share your criteria, what we'll do is prompt and notify you immediately if properties come to market that meet that criteria. But we can also register you for early alerts. So any properties that maybe are pre-market, while they're getting them staged and photographed, we've got a database we can send out properties that haven't come to market yet. But if you're,
don't say it's off market, because
I don't. No, not off pre-market.
Very
this
topical.
Is about leveraging that time between when you sign a property out for sale, with the agent.
It takes time to get stuff
and
organised.
then getting it ready. We just push out. You can have a single photo or no photo, but just a bit of alert. This property's coming.
It's on its way.
And for those that have missed out on auction after auction, they are so in want and need on being the first to know. So that's a gap that we're trying to help.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think the other thing is, utilising AI. So obviously it's talk of the town, everyone embracing AI. And so that's where we can extend this personalised experience further and start to feed you up both properties that are similar to what you're searching for. Or you've been looking at photos or properties with pools. How about we start sharing you up? Here's some other properties in surrounding areas that have a pool and you may not have considered. So it's starting to bridge that really tight criteria focus.
Yeah.
So, hey, maybe you should be looking at some other properties that, we think you'd love as well.
And so does everybody have the same search experience? I shouldn't ever ask questions I don't know the answer to. But does everybody have the same search experience? Or if I was particularly looking for something with pools, would it show me the photo of the swimming pool earlier?
At the moment, not yet. That's one of the things we're building.
Yeah, right.
I think we'd also like to get to the point, and what we're testing and just rolling out at the moment, how do we match your... you spend on average an hour and 50 minutes on social media a day.
Yeah.
Pretend not to.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to look at, and we've just launched, is when you search for a listing on Domain, we'll also push out every listing that's using our, sort of more premium listings onto social media as well. So across Instagram, across Facebook, and across Google Extend. So as a seeker, you might start to feel like, oh, these properties are starting to...
The public's going to find you instead of you. Look, you know what? I remember speaking to somebody maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said to me, when my child starts to get into the property market, the properties will find him. He won't be looking for the property. So that's exactly
and that's the shift what you talked about.
Yeah.
So we used to rely so heavily on print for more that passive buyer, or to open up your views on what else I might be looking for.
Yeah.
Domain's heavily working with Meta and looking at how to create a world first. When a listing is on Domain, it's also pushed out across those social media platforms as well. So it's more of a holistic experience. So whether or not you forgot to search today, we'll find you where you're looking on social and show up those homes with that sort of criteria that you've been looking at.
Yeah.
And really hopefully allow you to, not miss a property.
Not miss a property. Wow, there's a lot going on.
There is. We're excited. We're actually, just with our new experience, I think one of the other sort of shifts is we talked about not having to jump onto pages. So we've now blended your list results, so when you're looking just a whole list of properties for sale, or a map view. So some people love to draw their circle on a map. They really only want to live, if something in that street ever comes for sale, that's where I want to live. So we allow them now to go in and out of map view, really focusing on what Google Maps has done so well, and just trying to match, how do you like to search? We'll try and feed up, a version that matches that, so you feel like it's a personal and more intuitive experience.
Yeah.
A little example, the pins on the map, for example. So one change we just launched a few weeks ago, if you have a look at a property, the pin changes colour. And so next time you go into a map, the pins that you haven't seen are the new properties that come for sale.
That's such a good idea.
And then they're dulled down into a grey when you've already had a look at that property. So again, just trying to help you be more efficient. I know, how long and how stressful it is.
It's
trying
really
to look for property.
Yeah, it's really hard to buy property, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And are there any consumer trends that you're seeing from the people that are looking on your site?
A few things come to mind. So one is this shift in terms of how many people actually want to send an email inquiry. So over the last 5 years, though we have this, deep passion in Australia for property and interest in property, people and consumers are more likely to look at a property online and then turn up at the open home rather than sending an email
to the agent.
Or the other one that's really grown significantly over the last few years is saves and shares. Okay. So you'll save a property into your favourites list, so you're reminded of it. You'll share it with your partner, and so, hey, I just saw this great property.
Yeah.
But it's that shift that is, a change. I think consumers more and more are nervous. I don't want to get my details out in someone's database. I don't want to have an awkward conversation because I'm not ready.
I'm just not ready.
I'm not ready quite yet.
Don't want to answer any questions right now.
Yeah. And so that's been a big shift, I think, in consumer behaviour. Just they're still going to turn up at an open home, but they don't follow those steps that they used to.
So the agent will have no idea that they might have 50 people coming to an open home. Or
it's a harder one to gauge, and that's what we're really looking at. How do we help bridge that gap where people can, maybe register their interest but without sharing their details? How do we help bridge that change in consumer behaviour? But I think as a vendor, you need to be mindful and don't get disheartened if there hasn't been a whole lot of email inquiries. because that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to have a great show up on Saturday open home.
Yeah, that's so true.
The other one, I think, this shift is, the filtering. And so, again, when you go onto the site, we talked about how do you filter your property. I'm looking for a 2-bedroom, looking for a 4-bedroom. People are slowly getting savvier for that, but that would be my tip to searchers. It can be really overwhelming if you just type in Sydney property and potentially hundreds of listings from anything from, 900,000 to 10 million coming up for sale.
Yep.
I think as you get savvier, we see a consumer or a buyer who's closer to the end of the buying experience starts to get very tight on, I'm looking at 1.2 to 1.5, I'm looking at 2 and 3 bedrooms only. And that would be a little bit of a tip and a change that we're seeing in consumers starting to get a little bit more savvy.
Yeah.
And I think, you can Google anything now. So coming with that research, a tougher gig for the agents because you think about 10 years ago, all you knew about a property is what you were served up.
Yeah.
Now
the agent was the gatekeeper of all of the information back in the day, but it's not that case anymore.
Yeah, consumers are really educated now, and I think that's a big shift that we're seeing is consumers and buyers wanting to self-educate so they feel more confident going through that experience.
Yeah, which is fair enough too. And I guess you're seeing a lot more people searching for home office.
Yeah, so some of the biggest, so surprisingly, like pool is
popular.
Yeah, right up the East Coast, all across both regional markets and Sydney and New South Wales.
Yep.
Study and home office.
Yep.
And then more and more in some of the regional markets, especially as the dual occupancy and granny flat has really shot up as well. So I think, hate go back in time and talking about COVID, but this shift over the last few years, people are looking for lifestyle.
Yep.
You think about the challenges with supply on property and people trying to look for affordable property.
Yep.
So I think that shared housing, granny flat, and then the working from home in the studies is definitely a game changer. So,
for sure.
A tip for someone selling for property, how do you make sure you've turned that spare bedroom into a study, glamorise that spa into a pool?
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, those are all great tips. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
No problem.
Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having me, Leanne. Great to chat.